You know what? I think it's time. Alright, just got to find a roller coaster to ride for my next video. Let's see. Luna Park? Obviously not. The Gold Coast? Everything there's still under construction. No, this can't be. I've already been on every roller coaster in Australia? No, that can't be possible. There's got to be more. Just a wacky worm, some wisdom-powered coaster, anything. There's got to be something. I need something. Wait, what's this?
Where are you?
Roller coasters, like most things, do not last forever. They're built, they operate, they come and they go, and for various reasons, they close down. I may have been on every roller coaster currently operating in Australia, but there are dozens that have come before them and just no longer exist for various reasons. Today, I'm going to go and see if I can find the former sites of some of them. And what better place to start than right here in this industrial estate? I'm on Wonderland Drive, the former site of Australia's largest amusement park. Wonderland Sydney opened amid a wave of publicity on December 7th, 1985 at this site in Sydney's west, just off the M4 motorway. Spanning an area of 219 hectares, it featured 24 attractions at its peak, including 3 roller coasters. The park was situated here in Western Sydney in what is now an industrial estate, and out in this bushland there are still just a few remnants of what was once Australia's largest amusement park. It was modelled after Canada's Wonderland near Toronto, so this was a notably large amusement park, not just a small local venture, and perhaps its largest attraction was the Bush Beast. The Bush Beast opened with the park in 1985. It was a mirrored copy of the layout of Wild Beast at Canada's Wonderland, designed by American designer Curtis D. Summers and manufactured in-house by park operators Taft Broadcasting, with American firm PTC taking charge of construction. It hit a top speed of 90 kilometers an hour, making it still the fastest wooden roller coaster in Australian history to this day. Touted as the largest wooden roller coaster in the Southern Hemisphere, it truly lived up to its beastly name. Wonderland is remembered very fondly. It's perhaps Australia's most sorely missed defunct attraction. It would be remiss of me not to mention some of the other attractions, including 2 other roller coasters, the Vekoma Boomerang called Demon, and a smaller wooden roller coaster called the Beastie.
How much fun can you pack into Wonderland? How much fun can you pack into Wonderland? How much fun can you pack into Wonderland in one day? Woo! Wonderful! Wonderland! Wonderful! Wonderland! Wouldn't it be wonderful if the world was wonderful? Wonderland! How much fun?
As well as that, the park featured a 200+ foot drop tower, an inverting pirate ship, even a rare double Ferris wheel. It would have been incredible to be at in its peak. In 1997, after 5 years operating under Viacom's Paramount Parks, Wonderland was sold to Malaysian-based conglomerate Sunway Group. It was clear that Sunway had no intention of operating Wonderland as an amusement park. In fact, arguably it was a piece of business for the value of the land. Viacom were looking to offload Wonderland Sydney from their chain, so they were probably going to sell it at a reasonably bargain price. After Sunway's acquisition in 1997, only 1 ride was ever added to the park until its closure in 2004. After standing dormant for about a year and a half, Wonderland was completely demolished in September 2005, and as you can see, it's unrecognizable today. Most of the rides were sold on to new homes and other amusement parks around the world, but for the Bush Beast and its little brother the Beastie, it was the scrapyard. Today, a few scraps in some bushland is the only reminder of not only a lost roller coaster, but an entire lost amusement park. Okay, but we've all heard of Wonderland. Even I've made a video about it before. I'd consider that definitely defunct, but hardly lost. Let's try for something a little more obscure. One coaster that operated until very recently yet still has almost vanished from all sources on the internet is the mysterious Mad Mouse at Canberra's downunderland. Opening in the 1980s as Canberra Fair, downunderland was the brainchild of local restaurateur Albi Sedatus and originally featured a historical village, a zoo, a theatre, and a dining precinct. Its signature coaster was a travelling Alan Herschel Wild Mouse which dated back to sometime in the 1960s or 70s and was brought to the park at some time in the 1990s. Downunderland began operating many of its transportable amusement rides on a hired basis as well, while also operating a small park on a plot of land off the federal highway to the east of Canberra. After disputes over the lease in 2005, the company sought to find new land to operate its park and removed all of their attractions from the site. It appears they were unsuccessful in finding a new plot of land though, because the park never resurfaced, and the Mad Mouse, as it was known, was lost forever. Another coaster whose fate is shrouded in mystery is the Dragon Coaster from Tops at the Maya Centre in Brisbane. Once a thriving entertainment centre, this shopping mall used to feature an indoor amusement park on its top floor, known simply as Tops, and its signature attraction was this powered dragon coaster that roared above the shoppers on floors below. Manufactured by Zamperla and opening at some time in the late 1980s, it was a core memory for many Brisbane locals until it inexplicably disappeared off the face of the earth when Tops was unceremoniously closed in 2001. The space occupied by the park was repurposed into multiple retail spaces, so it seems that money was the determining factor in the park's closure. But as for the fate of the Dragon Coaster, no one seems to be quite sure. However, photos have surfaced that seem to suggest the train was converted into a train with wheels and was rented out for school fetes and small events. Pretty cool if true. Our next mysterious roller coaster brings me right here to the centre of Sydney. I'm in the Darling Quarter just south of Darling Harbour, which is always one of Sydney's premier entertainment spaces. This space behind me, which is currently used for entertainment and events, is called Tumbalong Park. But at the turn of the century, this used to be a lake, and this building right here behind me, which is currently the Commonwealth Bank headquarters, used to be one of Australia's premier indoor amusement parks, Sega World Sydney. Sega World was just one of Sega's many investments that came in the late 1990s as they fought with Nintendo for supremacy in the video game industry. In fact, in Australia at the time, Sega held a majority share of the video game market, and they sought to capitalise on that with an amusement park investment as well. Following the success of Tokyo Joypolis and its various other successful Sega World ventures throughout Japan, Taiwan, and the United Kingdom, Sega collaborated with Jack Fun to open Sega World Sydney on March 6, 1997. Sega World was intended to be the flagship attraction of the new Darling Walk complex here in Darling Harbour. It cost $80 million to build, and it was going to be one of the most advanced and state-of-the-art indoor amusement parks in the world. Or at least that's what the consortium head, Kevin Burmeister, claimed it would be.
Incoming message from Sega World. Hey there, space cadets, it's Sega World's birthday, and we got something for you. Kids, buy an unlimited ride pass and you'll get a free Sonic bag.
Burmeister confidently said that Sega World would make existing theme parks look old-fashioned. But while Sega World was advertised as offering future-active rides with interactive elements and state-of-the-art technology, very few of the attractions were particularly advanced or exciting. However, it did feature one roller coaster, Rail Chase. This was a minecart-style roller coaster with heavy theming elements, manufactured by Japanese company Masago Industrial. Now, Rail Chase may have been one of the more better themed roller coasters you're going to see in this documentary, but it didn't last very long, and as a result, we don't know much about the experience. That's because Sega World was seen as quite underwhelming compared to what the $80 million attraction was supposed to offer. As a result, attendances were very, very low. They were relying on a boost in attendance after the 2000 Sydney Olympics, but it never came. To add insult to injury, Rail Chase, which was certainly one of the more substantial of Sega World's attractions, was sold for a measly $140,000 to a park in India, where it is still believed to operate today. From being advertised as Australia's most advanced roller coaster in 1997 to being sold for less than 150 grand just 3 years later. Now that stings. So Sydney farewelled Sega World after just 3 years, and there's no evidence left of it today. But the next place I'm going to is still there, even though it never operated at all. Here's a few more roller coasters you might remember while I head to my next destination. Australia has a rich history of in-house built attractions, and this mysterious roller coaster is another of them. Operating at Leisureland Fair in Langwarrin to Melbourne's southeast, it was a mysterious custom steel roller coaster that served as the flagship attraction of the park when it operated from 1984 to 1992. Leisureland was a bit of a quirky place. It was situated on a large plot of land, and a steam train would take passengers from the car park into the park itself. Along with their in-house roller coaster, Leisureland featured a log flume, water slides, mini golf, a function centre, and various other rides. Other than a few photos and clips, this roller coaster truly is lost. In 1992, the land was purchased by a religious group who redeveloped the area into a mosque and cultural centre, although the former function centre building, known as the Castle, still remains on the site. By the way, Brisbane weren't the only ones whose Maya Centre used to feature an indoor amusement park. In fact, Adelaide's dazzeland was much bigger than Tops in Brisbane. Taking up the top 2 floors of the Maya Centre, dazzeland opened with the shopping centre in 1991, the crowning glory of the $570 million new development.
Roller coaster, dodgem cars, video games and lots of laughs. Come on down to Razzle's Dazzeland.
It featured dodgem cars and arcade games, but its signature attraction, much like Brisbane's, was a powered coaster that rode high through the shopping centre, known as Jazz Junction. But the story of this Zamperla powered coaster is even more tragic than the missing dragon. The Maya Centre in Adelaide was constructed partially thanks to underwritten funds from the State Bank of South Australia in support of the owners, the Rem Group. But the project went drastically over budget. And to make matters worse, the State Bank collapsed in 1991, leaving the state of South Australia with debts of over $3 billion. Already, a report stated that the state could be set to lose well in excess of $250 million on the Maya Centre project because the value of the shopping centre was considered to be far less than what it cost to build, and that responsibility was now on the state. Then, to make matters 1,000 times worse, a 16-year-old boy was tragically killed when he overbalanced and fell from an escalator on the 5th floor of the centre. An inquest found that Maya management had been warned to install additional railings, but they were not found liable as the escalators did meet Australian standards. Under a cloud of financial woes and with popularity declining as the shopping centre struggled to turn a profit, dazzeland shrunk from 2 floors to just 1, before ultimately being completely closed in 1997. Centre manager Nick De Bruyne said they wished to add more style to draw customers back to the shopping centre and change their image, and there was considerable interest from potential tenants, so the park was simply in the way. He also blamed so-called mall rats, teenagers causing mischief who were drawn to the park, who they did not want to be among the crowd at the shopping centre. So that Zamperla powered coaster just disappeared forever. Nowadays, the Gold Coast is a hotbed of entertainment and tourist traps, but it hasn't always been that way. One of the forerunners to the tourism industry in Surfers Paradise also had a roller coaster among its ranks, and many Gold Coast locals have fond memories of Grundy's. Opening in 1981, Grundy's was an indoor entertainment centre situated at the beach end of Cavill Avenue. The development of the project took place at the same time as the idea to remove vehicles from Cavill Avenue and turn it into a pedestrian mall, and its popularity is likely part of the reason that the strip is the bustling hub that it is today. The venue opened with a carousel, live variety entertainment, arcade games, a ghost train, a shooting gallery, an old-time photograph studio, and much more. Over the years, they would add computer arcade games and a massive 4-slide water tower directly opposite the Surfers Paradise beachfront. Their roller coaster was a simple Wisdom Rides kiddie coaster, but it was worthy of an inclusion in this video simply for its integral role in the development of what today is Australia's theme park capital. Grundy's closed in 1993. But of course this video would not be complete without going a little further north to Queensland's capital, where the locals all speak fondly of the short-lived World Expo Park.
This is fun! Come on, hop aboard!
They travel far to the unknowns and they miss their Aussie home.
And there it was, shining out in the dark, the best place on earth.
World Expo Park!
Built for Brisbane's World Expo in 1988, this park featured 3 roller coasters that were revolutionary for their day. Interestingly, all 3 of these coasters were relocated rather than scrapped, and all 3 still operate at their new homes today. Titan was a Vekoma boomerang, by far the most thrilling of the 3 coasters. And wait, I'm getting deja vu. Haven't we already talked about this coaster in this video? That's right, after World Expo Park's closure, Titan was relocated to Wonderland Sydney, where it operated as the Demon. After Wonderland's demise, the boomerang was shipped off to Alabama Adventure, where it operated as Zoomerang until 2011. It was then sold to Wonderland Amusement Park in Hyderabad, India, where it opened in 2016 as Recoil and still operates today. Perhaps the most unique of World Expo Park's 3 coasters was Centrifuge. This was a Vekoma swinging turns model, the Dutch manufacturer's answer to the Arrow suspended coaster. Only 3 of these were ever built, the other 2 being at Belgium's Bobbejaanland and Japan's Greenland. Its little brother was Supernova, a custom Vekoma Mark 900, which would have been a heck of a thrilling ride in an enclosed dark space. Both of these coasters were relocated to Thailand's Dream World, where they continue to operate today. So these 3 are some of the only coasters in this video that you could still ride today. Right, we've talked about a lot of defunct Aussie roller coasters so far, but I've saved some of the best for last. So strap yourselves in, you might be about to learn something new. Let's go through them, and while we're here, why don't you press the subscribe button down below? It's free, it helps the channel out, and you can always unsubscribe later on. Now I'm sure you've at least heard of the next roller coaster I'm going to talk about. Scenic World and the beautiful Blue Mountains to Sydney's west are home to the decaying remains of an 840-metre in-house roller coaster, which might have become one of the most unique and terrifying coasters in the world had it ever opened to the public. I'm talking, of course, about the Orphan Rocker. In 1984, Scenic World's owner Philip Hammond set about a highly ambitious project to design and build a one-of-a-kind roller coaster on top of the beautiful cliffs that surround his park. What he came up with, and sank millions of dollars into constructing, was the Orphan Rocker. Featuring trains with seats that rock from side to side and a swooping banked curve just meters away from the cliff edge, this would have been one terrifying ride. And I'm not just talking about thrills. Look at some of these transitions. But something happened. An Orphan Rocker has been decaying ever since. Now, urban legends say that sandbags were sent out as test dummies and never returned, or that someone was injured or even killed while test riding. But considering that Hammond and his family rode the coaster themselves with no incident, those stories seem unlikely. The story that the Hammonds have stuck with, while much more boring, probably makes more sense. While Orphan Rocker was Philip Hammond's passion project, the rest of the Hammond family did not agree that a roller coaster was the right fit for the park. Scenic World's attractions had always focused on rides that offered unique vantage points into the surrounding beauty of the Blue Mountains, not on thrill rides and adrenaline. As Orphan Rocker was continually delayed as expenses piled up to make it ready and safe for the public, eventually Philip Hammond retired and left control of the park to his family. And they collectively decided that money would be better spent on investment into restoration of their current attractions and into new scenic attractions. In its current state, Orphan Rocker would be a difficult and costly restoration project, and as long as the current Hammonds in charge don't see it as fitting in with their vision for the park, then this coaster is doomed to sit and decay. Sad really, that it never got to open to the public, although that may be for the better. Come on, let's go back to Sydney one last time and see some coasters that did operate. Welcome to Rushcutters Bay, just to the east of Sydney CBD, and behind me, currently under renovation so I can't get much closer, is White City Tennis Club. This is what would have been the site of Australia's first scenic railway. White City might already be ringing a bell in your head if you're an amusement park fan, and that's because it's one of those common amusement park names from the early days of the industry at the turn of the 20th century, a little like Luna Park or Dreamland. There were dozens of amusement parks named White City all across the United States and the United Kingdom, mostly inspired by the World Exhibition of 1893 in Chicago. And in 1913, one opened in Sydney. Now, Sydney's White City, which was just over there behind me, was designed by T.H. Eslick. That's the same man who designed Luna Park Melbourne. It was supposed to be like a miniature city. It had fountains, buildings, pavilions, even a little Japanese garden, but one of the main attractions would have been its scenic railway. The original Lamarcus Adner Thompson design, the same as Tivoli Gardens' Rutscherbahn, which famously still operates today. White City would have been an absolute marvel to see in its time. Along with its scenic railway, it featured a giant carousel built by the Philadelphia Toboggan Company, which cost almost 15,000 Australian dollars in the day. That's almost $500,000 when adjusted for inflation. This was a grand and magnificent piece of machinery. Now, if you're an amusement park romantic like me, it's time to cover your ears because the history of White City was not only short, but it ended tragically. After just 3 years of operation, which included live events, high-wire artists, live music, it would have been one of the hotspots of Sydney. It met a very unfortunate demise. A lightning strike hit the park and most of the buildings burned to the ground. Unfortunately, it was never able to open again afterwards. The land that was once White City became a tennis club in the early 1920s and one of the premier tennis destinations in Australia, if not the world. But there is one piece of White City that still survives today. That Grand Carousel managed to survive the fire, and it is none other than the Grand PTC Carousel, which is today at Luna Park Melbourne. Just another historic reason to visit that fantastic park. And so our journey through Australia's defunct amusement parks comes to an end. This is our final destination. Behind me is Tamarama Beach. I've chosen this place for good reason. A long time ago, in fact more than a century ago, this was the site of what would have been Australia's first amusement park, at least in the modern sense of the word. And it certainly was the site of Australia's first roller coaster. In 1906, an entrepreneur named William Anderson bought the land on the head opposite me, just across the beach there. That used to be the Bondi Aquarium. He also purchased another 20 acres of land around the area and built a new amusement park called Wonderland City. Now, by modern standards, Wonderland City here at Tamarama Beach was pretty insane. Some of the attractions included a hot air balloon that would take riders almost 4,000 feet into the air, as well as circus acts such as elephants, and even a roller skater who would jump off a ramp through a ring of fire into a tank of sharks. I'm not making that up. At night, Wonderland City would light itself up with different coloured lanterns in what was called Fairy City. It truly is a place that defies belief. But the main attraction of the park, and the reason that I'm standing here today, was the Switchback Railway. One of the very earliest designs of modern roller coasters from Lamarcus Thompson and Philip Hinkle. It would have started over on that hill on the other side there, taking guests down a gravity-fed railway before climbing another tower and going down another gravity-fed railway all the way back. It's the most primitive form of roller coaster there is, and we had one in Australia right here. Now, unfortunately, Wonderland City's demise was dogged with controversy and legal battles. It initially started because William Anderson built a fence across the top of the beach and tried to prevent local swimmers from accessing the beach, claiming that he had ownership of the land surrounding it. Unfortunately for him, a lot of the local swimmers were very powerful local businessmen, and he was never likely to have any success in a legal battle with them. That was not before a repeated battle in which swimmers would deliberately cut through Anderson's fence, after which he would call the police on them, they'd get a slap on the wrist, the fence would be repaired, and the same thing would happen the very next weekend. For that reason, Wonderland City became very unpopular with the locals here at Tamarama Beach. With the park's local reputation already souring, there were also controversies over the treatment of the animals and the performers in the circus acts, and soon attendances began to drastically drop. By 1911, Anderson could no longer afford to keep the park open and it closed. It is said that he lost £11,000 on the venture, which adjusted for inflation is the equivalent of more than 3 million Australian dollars today. Today there's little to no evidence of the park ever existing aside from a reference at the Tamarama Surf Lifesaving Club just opposite the beach over there, but it's still a very beautiful beach, an important piece of Australian amusement park history. Hold on. I was wrong. Now, my research found that the Switchback Railway at Tamarama Beach was Australia's first roller coaster, but halfway through filming and writing this production, I found out I was wrong. Thanks to the wonderful and very extensive research in this book by Edwin Dickinson, I managed to uncover some newspaper articles that show there were a few more. Now, the earlier roller coasters in Australia are shrouded in mystery because there's not a lot of sources about them. But let's go back from Tamarama Beach. The Switchback Railway there was Australia's first switchback railway, built by a man named Arthur Wellesley Harrison. But it actually operated prior to Wonderland City opening in 1906. It was part of the Bondi Aquarium, which operated from 1887. Tamarama was Australia's first switchback railway, but Arthur Wellesley Harrison would go on to build more. There were switchback railways in Melbourne, Hobart, Launceston, Adelaide, and even in New Zealand, India, and Singapore, all built by Harrison. But there are records of 2 roller coasters that predate even the first of the switchback railways. The first was built in Melbourne in early 1885. The very first roller coaster in Australia opened in 1885 in Fitzroy in Melbourne. The only sources we have about it are newspaper articles where a tender was put out to build what they call a gravity railway on the corner of Nicholson and Gertrude Streets in Fitzroy. We know it opened in late February 1885, and we know that nobody died on it, but that's the best review it got in the newspapers. So that suggests people were a little intimidated by this new invention. But 2 years later, a similar gravity railway would open right here in Belmore Park near Sydney's Central Station. Built by a man named Robert H. Donnelly, it opened in March 1887. Again, we know very little about what this gravity railway actually looked like. Even less so than Melbourne's, because this one only lasted for 2 months. Donnelly took out a 2-month lease on space here in Belmore Park to build his gravity railway. Unfortunately, when May came around, he was unable to extend the lease, and that was the end of Sydney's very first roller coaster. So this right here is where my search for Australia's lost roller coasters comes to an end. Not where I expected, but I must say, it's very interesting to be standing right where Sydney's very first roller coaster would have stood. Granted, only for 2 months. So that's it. There really is nothing else. All these coasters, they're gone. And there really are no more coasters for me to ride in Australia. Maloney's Coasters is doomed. Unless... Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please consider clicking the like button down below. It lets the YouTube algorithm know that you enjoyed that content, and it lets me know as well, so I know to make more like it. If you want to stick around and join the best coaster community on the planet, then please consider subscribing. We are so close to 1,000 subscribers, which is just crazy to think about. Again, thank you all so much for watching. Click over here to watch some more videos if you'd like to, and I'll catch you all in the next one.